Okay, so we're going to start on page Mem Gimel. You can see it on the screen with the first piece of the Zera Shimshon Elu Eser Makos. So we're at the point in the Haggadah now when the Haggadah is discussing the 10 Makos. And let's jump right in. The Maseches Edios, Omru, and Maseches Edios, Chazal said, the Mishpat HaMitzrim HaYeshnei Asar Chodesh. The judgment of the Egyptians, meaning that the experience of the plagues, that's what we're talking about specifically here. When we talk about, when that Mishnah talks about the Mishpat of the Mitzrim, when they were judged by Hashem with the plagues, lasted for 12 months. Uve Medrash Amrun, in the Shmos Rabbah it says, Shekol Maka Hayasam Mishameshes Ruvia Chodesh, every plague lasted for a fourth of a month, let's call that about a week. Vishar Yimei HaChodesh Hayu Masrin V'Paro, and the rest of the month they were warning Paro about the next plague, or for the first plague they warned him, and then it came for 3 weeks, and then it came for a week. There's actually a machlokas. If you look over there in the Medrash Rabbah, you'll see in the Shmos Rabbah, you'll see there's a machlokas whether or not there was 3 weeks of warning and 1 week of plague, or 3 weeks of plague and 1 week of warning. But for our purposes, for the Zera Shimshon's purpose, it doesn't matter, because the point he wants to make is that in that source, it says that each plague lasts 1 month. Whatever was going on, whether it was warning for the plague or the Egyptians actually getting struck with the plague, lasted a month. The Yesh La'ayin, and we have to look into the fact that Kivan de lo hayu ela eser makos, since there were only 10 makos, nimtza shelo haya mishpat mitzrim ela asara chadashim. Then actually it should turn out that they only had 10 months. The Egyptians only had 10 months of experiencing the makos, velo shnei masar chodesh, and not 12 months. So at first glance, it looks like we have you might look like a machlokas, or certainly a stira, contradiction between the two sources, the Mishnah and Edios and the Chazal and the Medrash Rabbah. Did the plagues last 12 months, or did they last 10 months? The Tiritz HaMarsha b'Perakama de Rosh Hashanah. So the Zera Shimshon brings down the Marsha, who says, the Ikal Meimar de la Olam mitchilas hamakos ad sofan hayushnem asar chodesh. Really, from the beginning of the first plague until the end of the last plague took 12 months. That's definitely what happened. Ubeinehem nivla ushishim yom. And during the course of all of the plagues, 60 days were used up with different kinds of things throughout that time that allowed them to extend over the 12 months, even though there were only 10 plagues. So in other words, picture in your mind, there's 10 plagues. If each plague lasted literally only a month and nothing else would have happened, then it could have been 10 months of plagues. But the way it really played out, the way Hashem wanted it to play out, and the Zera Shimshon, that's what he's building to. Why did Hashem want it to play out this way? Is because during that time, different things happened and different things occurred, that the 10 plagues were spread out over 12 months. We're in the second paragraph. We have to we have to analyze, why didn't Hashem in fact bring the 10 makos in 10 consecutive months? And why did he cause there to be breaks between them? In order that they would last exactly 12 months. Hashem could have done it in 10 months, and each plague he could have had the 3 weeks and the 1 week, however that's split up. And it could have lasted 10 months. So why did Hashem spread it out, specifically spread it out over 12 months? The Nireh, ki shem havaya baruchu, mashmo shehu mehaveh kol hahavayos. And the name, the name of Hashem, the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey, that name of Hashem implies that Hashem causes everything in the world to exist. Paro harosha hayakofer bazeh. Paro denied this. V'savar, and he thought shehakol al yedei shnei masar hamazolos, that everything in the world was controlled by the 12 mazolos. V'lachein haya mishpato shnei masar chodesh, and therefore his punishment had to take place over 12 months. Keneged shnei masar mazolos, corresponding to the 12 mazolos. Kedei shelo ya'avor chodesh echad below makkah, in order that there would not be 1 month without a plague, without any part of the plague happening. Again, whether or not it was certain days of the plague experience, whether or not it was certain days of warning for a certain plague, every single month had to have a part of a plague experience take place during that month. So Paro couldn't possibly think that the mazal that he thought was in control, the mazalos, the constellations that he thought were in control, he could never possibly think that they protected him during a specific month, and that's why there was no Makkah experience, no experience of a specific plague during a specific month. The Makkos had to be spread out over all 12 months so that every Chodesh, which corresponded to these 12 mazolos, had part of a Makkah experience. That's the basic point. Now the Zera Shimshon is going to go into some kind of Kabbalistic ideas, which I want to say up front, I don't truly understand. I'm going to go through it with you and translate it to the best of my ability, but for sure, anyone who has comments to add or understandings about this, please share them. And similarly, the Egyptians were enslaved, or better is oppressed, for 12 months, corresponding to the fact that they had oppressed the 12 tribes, who are compared to stars in mazolos. So that we don't just have this point that the Zera Shimshon made before about Paro and his belief in the 12 mazalos. We're taking it a step forward and saying all of the Egyptians suffered from the Makos over a period of 12 months because they had enslaved the Shvatim, the Shnei Masar, the 12 Shvatim. Ucheneged Shnei Masar Gevule Alachson. That is a term I'm not familiar with. And it also corresponds to the 12 borders of the alachson. My understanding of the word alachson is that it means a diagonal or a diameter, a line of some kind. And there are 12 of them, shehitziv HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'brios ha'olam, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu established during the creation of the world, shenivra b'shmo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that it was created in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So whatever these 12 gevulei alachson are that Hashem used to establish the world, there were 12 of them. And these are connected to the 12 combinations that can be made from the 4-letter name of Hashem, the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey. And every month, one of the combinations of how Hashem's, of that name can be written. And so too, one of the 12 mazalos has a certain relevance to each of the months. Now we're moving to the next page to V'heim mechuvonim keneged shnei masar shivtei kav v'shnei masar gevulim. The fact that we have these 12 combinations of Hashem's name corresponds to the 12 tribes and to the 12 borders, this Gevulei Alachson, Hashem Baruch Hu. And now we can complete the circle and say that Paro's punishment corresponds to each of the different names of Hashem, which brings us back to what the Zera Shimshon said in the beginning, that the whole problem, you might say, or a whole issue that Hashem wanted to address was that Paro and his nation did not accept Hashem. They didn't accept the belief in Hashem. They thought that the mazalos controlled everything. So Hashem said, I'm going to use each of the combinations of my name that you don't believe in. You don't believe I control the universe, and instead you believe in these mazalos, these 12 mazalos. So I'm going to use each of the months to show that each one of the parts of my name or combinations that my name can be made into is going to overpower everything else, and you're going to suffer a plague during each of the 12 months. Okay. Let's go to the next piece where it says, Elu eser mako shehevia Kadosh Baruch Hu ala Mitzrayim b'Mitzrayim. So quoting from the Haggadah, these are the 10 plagues that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought on the Egyptians in Egypt. And in this coming up piece, we need to be very, very meduyak in the words, very careful with the words. Shaninu b'Meseches Avos. We learned in a Mishnah in Meseches Avos. Asora nisim na'asu la'avosenu b'Mitzrayim, v'asora al hayam. 10 miracles were done for our forefathers in Egypt, and 10 on the sea. So 10 miracles were done for Bnei Yisrael in Egypt, and 10 miracles were done for them on the sea. Eser makos hevi HaKadosh Baruch Hu ala Mitzrayim b'Mitzrayim. 10 plagues were brought, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought on the Egyptians in Egypt, the Eser al Hayam, and 10 on the sea. Until that point is a quote from the Mishnah in the 5th parak of Pirkei Avos. So again, if we wanted to just state the concept that Pirkei Avos is telling us simply, we would say that Hashem is a significance to the number 10. As a matter of fact, that parak, if you take a look at that parak in Avos, the 5th parak, or just remember it from learning it before, it starts off with a whole list of things that are connected to the number 10. Later on in the parak, they talk about some other significant things that are and other significant numbers, but there's a whole list of things that have to do with 10. So in this particular Mishnah, it says 10 miracles were done to our forefathers in Egypt and 10 on the Yam. And then after that, 10 plagues the Egyptians suffered in Egypt, and 10 plagues they suffered at the Yam. The Yesh Nidak, the Hare HaRabbeinu Avadia Bartanura, the Shar HaMeforshim, Be'aru, She'aseres Hanisim Shenasu Lavosenu. We have to look into the fact that the Bartanura and other Meforshim on the Mishnah and the Avos explain that the 10 miracles that were done for our forefathers, it was that the Jews were spared from the 10 plagues. So the Bartanura, we have to focus carefully here. The Bartanura and other Meforshim are saying, don't think that the 10 miracles that were done for Bnei Yisrael were other completely different things that had nothing to do with the plagues. It was, in fact, that each time the Egyptians had a plague, the Jews miraculously were spared from any negative impact of that plague. The Im Kain, if so, if that's true, the Tana of the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos should have put first the statement about the 10 makos that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought on the Egyptians, and afterwards they talked about the 10 miracles that were done to our forefathers in Egypt. Let's just pause for a moment to make sure we understand that question. If the 10 miracles that were done for Bnei Yisrael were something separate and independent from the makos, then it makes sense that they go first. But if, according to the Bartanur and other Meforshim, the miracles that happened, the 10 miracles were that the Jews were spared from the makos, then you can't really mention those miracles before you mention the makos. You have to say the Egyptians were hit with 10 makos, and the Jews were benefited by 10 miracles. Because what's the miracle? What are the 10 miracles? That they did not suffer any deprivation or any problem from the makos. You have to talk about the makos first if what you mean by the nisim is that they were spared from any damages from the makos, is that's what was the miraculous, the 10 miracles. So it's a very strong question of why the Tana put things in the order that he put them. In order to answer that question, the Zera Shimshon is going to give us something that's a yesod, that's a theme for him, and many pieces that are to come. And I would say, I think it's safe to say also a chiddush in terms of the way people normally think of the makos. Here's where it comes. The nireh she'ikar hamatorah shel hamakos hayasol lehetiv l'bnei Yisrael. The main goal of the makos was for Hashem to do something good, to do good things for Bnei Yisrael. V'litein lahem hatovo shenigzru l'Mitzrayim, and to give them good things that had originally been decreed for Egypt and the Egyptians. Now I want to pause for a second, because normally, I think if you ask most people, and you ask them what was the main point of the plagues, it was to punish the Egyptians. The Egyptians had made Bnei Yisrael suffer in so many ways, so the main point was to punish them, to make them suffer in all kinds of different ways that were connected to all kinds of different things that they had done. So the Zera Shimshon says, no, Ikar HaMatara, the main purpose, that might have been a side purpose or a secondary purpose, but the primary purpose of the makos was to do good for Bnei Yisrael. And then he adds, not just to do good for them, but to do good for them specifically in a way that they were taking away from good that was originally destined to happen, or originally was supposed to happen for the Egyptians. So let's continue. V'lachein shapir hiktim asora nisim shenasu Yisrael. And therefore, now with this idea in mind, it makes sense that the Tana of the Mishnah and Avos put the 10 miracles for Bnei Yisrael first. Lifnei Aseres HaMakos Shabol Ala Mitzrayim. Before the 10 Makos that happened to the Egyptians. Why? Because the Tana is teaching us that Hashem's ambition, his primary motivation was to do something good, to do Nisim for Bnei Yisrael. That has to come first. Not because it necessarily chronologically came first, because it came through the Makos happening in Bnei Yisrael being spared, but the point is that was Hashem's Iker motivation, so it has to be stated first by the Tana. And of course, the Zera Shimshon wants us to understand that's why the Tana put it first, to teach us that. That's what he's hinting to in the Mishnah and Avos. Since Bnei Yisrael did not deserve this outpouring, this flowing of blessings in their own merit, Shaharei Adayin Lo Haya Lohem Zuchus. They didn't, Bnei Yisrael in Egypt didn't have many Zuchuyos, meaning they didn't have many mitzvos to perform. They didn't have Zuchuyos that they could point to. Elazochu Bizchus Avram Avinu Olav Hashem. They had the Zchus. What Zchus did they had? They had Zchus Avos. They had the Zchus of Avram Avinu. Lachein Dikte Katana Lomar. Therefore, the Tana was very precise with his language to say, Asora Nisim Na'asu la'avosein. 10 plagues were done for our forefathers. The language, the key language there is the Shoresh Asa, that were done, Na'asu, in the form it's put in. These 10 miracles were done for our forefathers. Remiz Bazen, the hint in this, Shena'asu lohem bizuchus avosam, is that it was done for them, not in their own merit, but rather in the zuchus of the avos. And as we see in a pasuk in Tehillim, neged avosam asa pella be'eretz Mitzrayim. Corresponding to their forefathers, did Hashem do wondrous things in Eretz Mitzrayim. So we see clearly this idea and the use of the word, the word our shorish that we're focusing on, done, that the amazing things that were done in Egypt were done for Bnei Yisrael, not in their own merit, but because of the merit of the Avos. So we're the Tana is hinting to that by using the word Na'asu, Avosenu. Miracles were done for our forefathers. Now let's continue. The Ilu be'eser makos, and if you look in the Mishnah and Pirkei Avos, you'll see that when it comes to the 10 makos, Amar shehevi HaKadosh Baruch Hu al HaMitzrayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought them on the Egyptians, not did them to the Egyptians, brought them to the Egyptians. Because the purpose of the makos, the primary purpose of the makos, was to do something good for Bnei Yisrael. So again, just to go back to make it very clear why the language is so significant from the Mishnah and Pirkei Avos. When we do something, that's talking about the main purpose. This is what we're doing. This is our main objective. When we talk about heavy, something is being brought, that's less direct. That's not the primary purpose. It happened to them. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did bring makos on the Egyptians, but according to the Zera Shimshon, we're supposed to see that the makos were done. That's their primary goal of the makos, were done for Bnei Yisrael in order for them to have nisim and to benefit. Then they were brought on the Egyptians. It's a little bit like if a person bakes a cake for some specific person, let's say their birthday, right? So I can say I made the cake for Joe. Then when we cut up the cake, I'm going to bring pieces to different people, but I didn't make the cake for them. I made the cake for Joe, and then I brought pieces, maybe I brought pieces to other people. So a little bit of a prosaic analogy, but hopefully the point comes across. And listen what he says further. And even though we can see in the Mishnah Avos that the Tana connected Hashem's name, the name HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with the makos, whereas you would think he should put it with the first part of the statement about the nisim that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did. You don't see Hashem's name. You don't see the words HaKadosh Baruch Hu when it says nisim were done for Bnei Yisrael. You only see HaKadosh Baruch Hu when it's talking about bringing the plagues on the Egyptians, and that's not usually the derech of Chazal. So even though Hashem's name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mentioned on something bad, lo ichpas lan. This is not important to us. We don't care about this. Kivon shezeh hara'a l'tovasan sheYisrael hi. Because this bad that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did to the Egyptians, it's primary purpose was to do something good for Bnei Yisrael. So the usual rule of not connecting Hashem's name to something bad or negative doesn't apply here, because the makos were in fact positive. They were destructive, but that was the secondary purpose. The primary purpose was to be something positive. And we're going to see that in the next little piece that's coming up. I hope everybody's good so far. Very deep, very powerful things here. Okay, let's continue, please, with the next piece at the bottom of the page. I'm just going to adjust my page a little bit. The bottom of the page. Shehevi HaKadosh Baruch Hu al HaMitzrim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought these plagues on the Egyptians. Isa, it is stated in Masechta Shabbos. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Amar LaAvram Avinu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Avram Avinu, Ein Mazal Yisrael. This is towards the end of Masechta Shabbos. There is no constellation for Bnei Yisrael. Bnei Yisrael is excluded from the system of control of mazalos, of constellation. And what benefit Avram Avinu got from this, sheyotza min hamazal, that he came out of the system and control of the mazalos, urevach gadol lebana. This is a great benefit to his children. Sheyuchlu le'echol b'zechuso gam mima shenitzar la'acherim. Because now the descendants of Avram Avinu are able to get benefit from things that were decreed for other people. And therefore, when the Egyptians were struck with their 10 plagues, and this resulted in them not receiving, being prevented from receiving good things that were intended for them. At that same time, concurrently, 10 miracles were done for Bnei Yisrael, meaning they were spared from the plagues, but more than that, they benefited from the plagues. Uchemosha Amru Razal, as the Rabbanim say in the Medrash Rabbah, Mimakas Dam Ha'ashiru Yisrael. From the plague of blood, the Jewish people became wealthy. Uchedome, and similar to this. This is very important, and the Zera Shimshon only alludes to it, so I want to explain what's going on over here, because the Zera Shimshon wants to say it's not just that Bnei Yisrael were protected from the makos that the Egyptians suffered, it's that they actually benefited from each of the makos, and this is to support and to illustrate what the Zera Shimshon just said and established that the primary purpose of the makos was to benefit Bnei Yisrael. So what does the Medrash Rabbah say about this? It says the following: that when the Makkah of Dam happened, when the plague of blood happened, the Egyptians didn't have water to drink. They couldn't drink any of the water from their normal source. And the water, wherever they could find it, had turned to blood. So they couldn't drink it. So they came to the Jews, or they happened to see Jews, and they see the Jews drinking regular water. And so they want that water. So the Medrash says that the Egyptians would go over to Jews and they would say to them, please give me some of your water. But if a Jewish person gave from his or her water to an Egyptian, it would turn to blood. So the Medrash says once the Egyptians saw that dynamic, they thought, okay, we've got to be very clever here. So they said to the Jews, okay, don't give us the water. Pour the water into a bowl, and then you drink from it, and I'll drink from it at the same time. Because if we're both drinking from it at the same time, how could it possibly turn into blood? But the Medrash says when the Jew did that and said, okay, fine, I'll pour water into a bowl or a cup, and now let's both drink from it at the same time, it turned into blood for the Egyptian, and it remained as pure water for the Jew. So there was no way, the Egyptians realized there was no way they could get the water from the Jews, and this is what they thought at first, and have it not turn to blood when they drank it. So what did they do? They bought the water. They said, okay, let me buy water from you. When they bought the water from Jews, then they were able to drink it and have it not turn to blood. Tremendous benefit to Bnei Yisrael, because ha'ashiru, they became wealthy, they became rich. Imagine a society in which everyone in the country has to come to Jews to buy water, right? The most basic necessity, the most basic staple of life. We can't live without water. If you have a country, as Egypt became during this plague of Dam, Makas Dam, where in order to have water, if you're an Egyptian, in order to have water, you had to go and buy it from a Jew. Then of course the Jews were going to become very wealthy. So let's make sure we see that this is the first illustration of this phenomenon that the Zera Shimshon has developed for us, that the primary purpose of Hashem in bringing the Makos was not to make the Egyptians suffer, to punish them. It was to benefit Bnei Yisrael, as we see that the Makkah of Dam made the Egyptians suffer for sure, made them suffer tremendously, but also enriched tremendously Bnei Yisrael. So Bnei Yisrael is benefiting, one, by having water to drink and not suffering from the plague, but then an added benefit that they're being paid at probably high prices to buy the water that they have from the Egyptians. We're going to go to the next page. We're on page Mem Hey. We're going to take a look at the second paragraph where it says Makas Dam, and we're going to learn a little bit more about the plague of blood. Makas Dam. Ksiv, it's written in the Chumash and Shmos. V'hadago asher ba'yor mesa. The fish that were in the river died. So not only did the water turn to blood, but the fish that were in the river died. Yesh l'dayik mizeh shelo kol hadagim mesu. We can infer from the language of this pasuk that not all of the fish died. And I believe the diuk is based on the fact that if the Torah wanted to say all of them died, it would say v'chol hadaga. All of the fish, or v'chol hadagim, or v'hadagim, it would say fish plural, or it would say kol, it would use the word all. But the Torah doesn't use the word all, or doesn't say the statement in such a way that we would think it's an absolute statement that all the fish died. So we can infer that some fish, maybe the vast majority of them died, but some fish survived. This must mean that only the fish that the Egyptians took from the water died. But the fish that Bnei Yisrael would take were alive. So the Jews were able to go and take fish from the river and during this plague of Dam, and the fish would be alive, and they would have live fish. And they became rich through this. So they're selling water and they're selling fish, two commodities that the Egyptians couldn't possibly get during this time. And look carefully at what's written in Tehillim, and this is from Perek Kuf Hey in Tehillim that we say in the Psukei de Zemer on Shabbos, where it lists, where David HaMelech describes the Yetzias Mitzrayim and the Makos, and it says, Vayomas es dagasa. Hashem, the words before that are Hafach es mehem ledam. Hashem turned their water to blood, Vayomas es dagasa, and he killed their fish. Right? Look how clear that is. It doesn't say, and he killed the fish. He killed their fish, meaning the fish that the Egyptians wanted to take from the water, but not the fish of Bnei Yisrael. And the reason that the Egyptians suffered not only the water turning to blood, so they didn't have water to drink, but also the death of the fish, so they wouldn't have fish to eat. Because they were doing everything they could to stop the Jewish people from multiplying. And therefore, they were trying to prevent the Jewish people from the bracha of they will multiply like fish. Therefore, according to the principle of midah keneged midah, Hashem wiped out the fish that the Egyptians wanted to get or tried to get from the river. We're going to go to page Mem Vav. Okay. If you come down to the piece, let's see, there's just a line or two, and then it gets to the piece of Makas Dam, and Zera Shimshon's going to say, I think, one more extremely important piece, explanation here about the plague of blood before he starts talking about the second Makkah of Tzfardeya. He's going to say one more thing to even give us more information about how the Makkah of Dam worked and why Hashem wanted it to work that way. Makas Dam, the plague of blood. Yesh ledaktek, we can be need to be precise about the fact, Lama hayutzrichen b'nei Yisrael le'is asher miyad b'makas dam. Why did Hashem make it so immediately Bnei Yisrael started to get wealthy during the plague of blood? Halo havtachas va'achrechen yetzu b'rechush gadol, the promise that Hashem made all the way back to Avram Avinu, that after the Jews are enslaved, they're going to leave with great wealth. Namar al shas yitzias mimitzrayim. That was said about when they would leave, finish their slavery, their servitude, and would leave Egypt. And that's when they needed to become wealthy. And of course, we know that's the point where the Chumash tells us that the Jews were instructed to go and to borrow clay kesef, clay zahav, and to leave Egypt with tremendous wealth. So the Zera Shimshon is asking, okay, we get it that the Jews became wealthy, but the prophecy, the prediction that Hashem made that they would become wealthy really referred to when they left Egypt. Why did Hashem make it that they started becoming wealthy right at the first plague of Dam? Yesh lefarish al mad isa, and we can explain this based on what it states in Beseches Baba Basra. Shekosha anios besof beso shel adam yoser mechamishim makos. The Gemara there says that poverty in someone's home is more difficult to them, more challenging to that person than chamishim makos, than 50 plagues. V'harei hamitzrim loku chamishim makos. And according to, and we know this is brought down in the Haggadah, this machlokas tanoim, but according to the view of Rabbi Akiva, we know that the Egyptians suffered 50 plagues in Egypt. V'im keinim yu b'nei Yisrael aniyim, and if therefore, if the Jewish people would have been considered aniyim, and here I believe what he's saying is if when the plague started, anything would have happened, any negative results from the plagues would have caused them to be more in poverty. Obviously, they had very difficult lives and they weren't rich in Egypt, but if any of the plagues would have caused that, nimsim shalokim yoser mehen, then we would find that the Jews were being hit harder than the Egyptians, because the Egyptians would have suffered 50 plagues, again, according to the view of Rabbi Akiva and that machlokas tanoim. And the Jews, because of their poverty, because of the plagues causing them poverty, would in any way, or worsening their condition in any way, would have a worse fate than the Egyptians. Therefore, Hashem made it shemiyad b'maka harishona yisashru b'nei Yisrael. Right at the beginning of the first of the plagues, not only did the Jews not suffer from this plague that happened to the Egyptians and started to wipe out, dismantle their economy, but they became wealthy. In order for Hashem to make it clear that only the Egyptians were going to suffer. But regarding Bnei Yisrael, they were not going to suffer at all from the Makos, even though the Egyptian life and economy and everything was going to be completely wiped out. And you would think if the Jews live there in some way, they're going to be negatively affected by that. It's like living in a country where there's a total economic crash and chaos. It's going to affect everyone, maybe some people less directly. So Hashem says, no, not only are Bnei Yisrael not going to suffer, they're going to benefit from each one of the plagues. Again, going back to the theme that he established in the beginning. And in a different way, we can understand something stated in the Zohar. When the quote-unquote new Paro came into power, he really wanted to kill the Jews outright. Amar lo Eov, so one of his advisors, Eov, said to him, Kach mamonam, take their money, take their wealth, Vishalot al gufam, and then take control of their bodies, be'avodah kasha, through hard labor and forced labor, ba'al tahargein, but don't kill them. So this advice that Eov gave spared the Jews from being killed. He said, don't wipe them out, don't annihilate them, but rather take their wealth, and then after that, as a first step, then enforce the labor upon them. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says to Eov, "Ba'oso hadin mamish adonoscha." With that exact judgment and counsel that you gave to Paro, that's what's going to happen to you. And that we learn about in Sefer Eov. That's not what the Zera Shimshon wants to talk about here. V'lachein mida keneged mida, but what we do see is that the Jewish people benefited mida keneged mida from this plan. Mitchila ha'eshiru Yisrael, because as soon as the plague started, they became enriched. V'achar kach laku hamitzrim begufa. And then after, so the Egyptians had to give Bnei Yisrael their money, and then after that they were struck in their body. So the Egyptians suffered from losing their wealth. They had originally actually taken the Jews' wealth. Now they got struck by losing their wealth, and then their bodies were struck and suffered the same way they made Bnei Yisrael suffer. Okay. I think we'll take a look at the bottom here of the page where it says Makas Tzvardeya. We'll look at something on Tzvardeya, the plague of the frog. So we're at the bottom of page Mem Vav. Makas Tzvardeya, the plague of the frogs. Ksiv, it's written in the Torah, right? When it describes the Eser Makos, the 10 plagues. These frogs are going to come up and they're going to come into your house. This is talking about Paro's house, and into your bedroom and on your bed and into the house of your servants and amongst your people. So Paro is specifically told that by Tzvardeya that the frogs are going to come and start with his house, him and his house, and his up to the point of coming into his bedroom and on his bed, and then it's going to go to his servants and to his people. Nira lefaresh almad Isa. We can explain based on statements that are made in Shmos Rabbah. Shene'enshu hamitzrim b'makas Tzvardeya. The Egyptians suffered this particular plague of frogs, lefi sheminu es Yisrael, because they had appointed Bnei Yisrael latzud lahem shkotzim v'ramosim, to hunt and collect and gather for them different types of reptiles and crawling, creeping creatures. Lachein hevi alehem tzvardeim mida keneged mida. Therefore, Hashem brought on them a plague of frogs, mida keneged mida. So it wasn't just another creative way to bring a punishment to the Egyptians. It was mida keneged mida because the Egyptians had ordered that the Jews would go around and collect these different things for them to eat. And it appears that the reason that the Egyptians wanted Bnei Yisrael specifically to go collect and trap these reptiles and frogs and creatures for them, they hoped that the Jews themselves would develop a desire to eat these things. And this would be damaging to their bodies, and this could prevent them from being able to grow and be strong and healthy and multiply, which is what their original, according to the Chumash, what their original fear was about the Jews, that they were so strong and they were multiplying in such a way. And also, of course, here, the Zera Shimshon wants us to remember that he told us previously that the Egyptians wanted the Jews, Bnei Yisrael, to do Averis, so to go against their own rules and their laws. And according to this, Paro made a decree on the overseers, that he shouldn't allow Bnei Yisrael to sleep in their houses. And this is where the overseers hurried Bnei Yisrael, and they lemor to say to him, Al devar zeh v'ho Yisrael yishenim ba'aretz. And the Jewish people had to end up sleeping outside of their land. This is referring to the incident in which Paro's response to Moshe and Aaron coming to him was to say, it's because nirpim, they're lazy, the Jews aren't working hard enough. Take away the straw and tell them that they still have to produce the same amount of bricks. So the overseers went out to the Jews and said, you're going to have to work a lot harder, you're going to have to work a lot faster. And part of that process, according to the Medrash, was that they decreed that the Jewish men couldn't go back home. That would take too much time to travel back home. They said to them, no, you're going to have to sleep out in the fields so that the moment you get up in the morning, you can start collecting the straw and making the bricks, and you'll work in the fields until you're done, and you'll sleep right out there in the fields, and you won't be able to go home. And according to this, it now makes perfect sense. Seder hadvarim b'pasuk, the order of the things that are mentioned in the pasuk, the specific order of how the Tzvardeim came. The kiven sheparo hischil be'avera, because Paro was the first one to make these decrees. Mimeno hischila haparanos, from him started the punishment So he was the first one to suffer from the frogs. And therefore, right in the beginning, it says, they're going to come into you, into your house, and into your bedroom and on your bed. Because he had made a decree to tell the overseers to no longer let them sleep in their homes and in their beds. And afterwards, the frogs would come into the house of his servants. Shehem hanogsim. This specifically refers to the overseers. Shahayu ma'akrim es Yisrael, because they were the ones who prevented the Jews from going home and sleeping, returning to their homes and sleeping in their beds. As we said before. V'lo kosuv kol avodecha, and it doesn't say all of your servants. Kilo kulam hayu memunim al zeh. Not all of Paro's servants were specifically engaged in making sure that the Jews had to do their work and sleep in the fields as opposed to going home. And afterwards it says, after Paro suffers from the frogs, and after these officers, the overseers suffer from the frogs, then it refers to the rest of the people, but for a different reason that he already mentioned. Because they were sending, the regular people, the regular Egyptians, were sending out Jews to collect the shkotzim and ramasim for them. So according to the Zera Shimshon, the order of the pasuk is very miduyak, of course, and it specifically is talking about why the Sephardim first afflicted Paro, and then why they then afflicted the overseers, and then the regular people for the reason of sending out. They were the ones sending out the Jews to collect. However, this last reason, this reason would not have applied to the servants who were also suffered. Because the officers and the noble people of Egypt would not eat such lowly foods, which are considered disgusting by the aristocracy. But the regular people ate these things and sent the Jews to collect them, and so that's the reason that they suffered from the Tzfardim. So there's kind of a hierarchy and a different reason why different people or groups are suffering from the Tzfardim. And that is reflected, according to the Zera Shimshon, in the order given in the pasuk. We're going to end here. Yashar koach to everyone.